Hello and welcome to a new episode of Fundraisers on Film. It's the summer holidays are over now. Kids have gone back to school. We've started podcasting again. That's what it is. We're back at it. That's how we're going to do it. And of course, because the kids have gone back to school, the weather has turned lovely. It is now.
It's beautiful.
Yes, it's lovely weather. It's baking hot again, you know, because why would we
repeat
ever?
of the sweaty fundraisers on film.
Maybe not that bad, but near enough.
Well, it is here. I'm super, super hot.
Okay, then. Lovely. Nice to know.
just images that you can cherish. That's the beauty of not having a video, isn't it?
Yeah. So this week's episode, we are talking about films in our formative years. So we thought we'd chat about films that we between the ages of 16 and 21. So that was our age range. We were going to go there, talk about some films that really sort of, I'm not going to say, well, maybe formed our film tastes for like university or moving forward. So they're the sort of films that we were aiming for on this week's episode. I just thought it'd be really quite an interesting topic, really quite a lot of fun. But we will start with some very, very sad news, some very tragic news. Poor death of Omar. Very sad.
Michael K. Williams.
It's
a real tragedy, an absolute tragedy, and such a loss of talent. But, you know, I think kind of seeing the outpouring of grief and support on, social media channels and, just across the world, I think is testament to what a legend he was. And
he only came to acting quite late, and I said a few interviews with him. He was talking about his acting and how he got into it, and he never grew up to be an actor. He was seen one day, tried it out, got into it. I think he was in his late 30s when he started.
There's hope for me yet.
Yes, I know. I was thinking that as well. I was like, late 30s, you know, we could still make it. But yeah, so he
by the skin of our teeth.
We could still make it. But yeah, and then obviously the role that he's most famous for is Omar, which he really made that role his own in The Wire, which was just a phenomenal role, which he, like I say, he made his own, and one of TV's iconic characters, one of TV's great anti-heroes. Yeah, definitely, and
I think if it's official, it's definitely up there with one of the greatest sort of supporting roles of television. But yeah, it's just, and he did so much more, like, you know, his role in Boardwalk as well, like that was one of my favorite characters, Chalky White. But yeah, a real sad start to the podcast, but just I think it was important that we pay tribute to the late great Hello.
Technical difficulties here on the Fundraisers on Film podcast. We keep cutting out.
We do.
So to avoid any more interruptions and potential cuttings out, we'll just get straight to it. Yes, we shall. Emma, would you like to go first?
So my first film is City of God, 2002, by Fernando Meirelles and Katia Lund. This was just such a defining film for me at that period of my life. I'm not going to go into too much detail. Impactful international films or foreign language films I think I probably watched, and it me that I watched it over and over and over again. So for those of you who haven't seen City of God, City of God is the story told from the kind of notorious favelas of Rio de Janeiro, in literally the slum or the the suburb called City of God. I'm not going to try and pronounce what it is in Portuguese. So you follow your main protagonist, who is a boy called Rocket. Rocket is a young kid. He very much sits sort of on the outlines of the community, I suppose. In City of God, your options are pretty limited. You either identify and become part of the violent gangs that are in the city or that run the city, or you sort of sit on the sidelines and just watch, just sort of not watch it but accept it. And Rocket sort of sits somewhere in between that. So he definitely doesn't integrate into the violence, never commits violence. He's kind of a bit of a, I don't know, I suppose you could say he's a bit of a moral compass for the viewer, but he does participate in it, in that he is a photographer. And so he captures a lot of the action that's happening in the City of God, a lot of the crime, a lot of the trauma. So you are following Rocket, but you meet other kind of key characters like Little Z and his best friend Benny. You meet them all as children, and you see them sort of growing up in the city. So it's kind of talking a lot about kind of this idea of the development of crime. You meet them as very young kids undertaking, I mean, you know, I say petty crimes, but, you know, smaller things, like stealing from neighbors and stuff like that. But then by the time we get to the end of the film, they're committing really heinous crimes like, well, murder. The thing that I really love about this film, I mean, it's shot on Super 16, and they use a lot of techniques to create like a real documentary feel to the film. So you very much feel like you're not watching a film in a kind of fictional sense. You are watching a piece of non-fiction. But as much as it does that, it also, on the flip side, has probably some of the most beautiful cinematic moments in cinema. The framing and the way they use kind of Rocket's cameras, like, and is it almost like an extension from the viewer. It's just very, very, very clever. So these kids are kind of raised on these very violent streets, and then sadly they kind of go on to then commit similar violence themselves, and it kind of gives you this idea of the perpetual cycle of crime, so much so that actually even when the story of Rocket and Benny and Little Z, when their story ends, the final scenes, you see another group of kids just like they were at the beginning of the film going on, and you know that they're going to have the same story, that, you know, there's going to be crime and there's going to be violence and death, and, you know, and I suppose it's that kind of sad monotony of the streets. Obviously, you know, people try to leave. You've got characters like Goose and Shaggy, and Benny themselves. Benny, like, who's obviously, as I said before, a kind of key role. They all try to leave, but they can't, because when they try, they are murdered. And, you know, that is kind of quite an interesting motif, in that the only person in this film that ends up managing to escape City of God is Rocket. And I remember reading something that was saying, you know, the only reason that Rocket could escape was because he had something the world wanted. You know, he was a photographer. He becomes like this photojournalist that the world sort of likes, because it gives them a very unique, like, look into the world of the City of God, but from a safe distance. Whereas, you know, the other sort of characters like Goose and Benny and Shaggy, they don't have that. They just have their lives of crime, so they don't have anything that can be brought into the real world, or actually, you know, the real world doesn't want them because they're criminals. So yeah, one of the big things about City of God is, though the film kind of really focuses on it's not a small place, but a very kind of localized place, the cast is humongous, and I mean, I don't know if you found this when you watched it, Mark. It just like you're trying to remember everyone's name, and there's all of these different sort of characters, all these, and especially when they're younger, it felt more like Lord of the Flies, just hundreds of these children like running around committing absolute chaos. But the thing that this film does really, really well is it doesn't ever feel like it's giving more, like there's no point in which actually either one actor or one character is alone in a frame. There's always other people with them, at least one or two or three, and if not more. And I think what that does is kind of, it shows the importance of that community and how it's all really cleverly interlinked. And all of these characters, regardless of the vast number of them, you all see them talking eventually to pretty much everyone. So, you'll have sort of Benny will talk to one person who will talk to another person, and it all seems very, very kind of insular and very connected. But what that does, which I think is quite clever, is kind of make you realize that what you're watching on screen is only a really small portion of the story, and you become very kind of apathetic to this notion that actually this is half of what's going on, if that, and it all fits into this much bigger frame of really just crime, poverty, and violence. But I don't know, I think it's kind of, it's difficult because it's not an easy film to watch at times. I use the reference of Lord of the Flies, and it does remind me of that story in lots of ways. It's very much, and maybe I like it because when I was younger, like really small, my favorite films were the films where kids ruled the world. Your Goonies, where your Stand By Me, Blank Check, which I think I've mentioned 20,000 times.
Yes, you've mentioned it once before.
Once or twice or 30,000 times. But I think I like that idea of, the kids somehow being the only sensible ones and adults being either absent or idiots. And I think that they use that construct and kind of flip it a little bit, of being like, this is what happens in these very kind of harsh streets of Brazil, and this is the danger. Like, I suppose in your kind of Hollywood approach, it's very much like all kids acting up, being like all big and it's fine, we can sort this, we're kids. Whereas in City of God, it's like these kids are denied their childhood because they have to just go into this like horror. Well, they didn't even go into it. They just have to witness from day one this extreme crime and these horrible violences. But I think it's not, if you're looking for a film with a really clear like start, middle, end, probably not going to be your film, because there's so many interesting different stories that are running kind of side on side. But I think that just makes it a much richer film. And like I say, I think, again, it's probably one of those films that the cinematography really sticks with you. It's very beautiful, it's very clever, it really kind of, I guess it kind of reaches out to you as a viewer and it makes you feel part of it. I was reading an article not that long ago, and they were saying that the director purposely didn't put markers on the floor, so the camera man or woman, whoever's operating the camera, didn't quite know where to focus. And because of the huge number of people that are usually on set at any one time, you get a lot of these like sort of double takes almost, which I think adds to the chaos. And let's face it, if we were dumped in the City of God, I think we would probably be doing a lot of double takes, like, what, hang on, what just happened? Or like a lot of quick cuts and sort of sharp pans and stuff like that. And I think it was a little kind of technique that really made a huge impact. But I think I don't think there's anything else I could really say about it. It's just such a fantastic film. You'll always find it in the top 100 list of films to watch before you die, because you should, and that's that. But it was something that just it really defined separated my I enjoy watching films on a Friday night to I think I want to go and learn about why people make films like this. So so City of God.
Yeah, I remember. I told you, didn't I? said we studied City of God in film studies in sixth
So
form.
jealous.
Yeah, well, it was a long time since I watched it, but I always remember the scene that always stuck with me is I think it's like the opening scene where the main character's stuck in the middle of two gangs that are coming together, and the camera stops and it like pans round, and
it does like
this
a
is
sort
the
of a
start
360.
Yeah, I always remember that scene and the way that was constructed, and then when it eventually goes back to that scene and how it's then finished, its sort of conclusion to that bit. Yeah, it's a fabulous film. It is a great film.
It is. It's funny when you rewatch it, and it genuinely is. There are certain points that make you feel you're just watching a documentary. You know, like there are the use of, they kind of take the idea of looking through a camera lens, you know, with that kind of focal cross, and they'll put that at the front, and it's sort of as if you're looking through Rocket's camera. And a lot of kind of like handheld, like almost like home video style filming that makes you think you are just, you know, you're watching a documentary crew in the heart of this, you know, of this favela. But then contrast to that, or flip, you have those incredible shots, like that kind of 360 pan with Rocket wedged in between these two gangs. The framing, you know, there's certain cuts where it's just beautiful, and it doesn't, in my mind, looking at it from a sort of an abject point of view, it doesn't make any sense. But when you're watching it, it's seamless, and it just works so well. And yeah, I can't rave about it enough. It is just such a brilliant film, and I think it's one that a lot of people have heard of, but maybe haven't taken the step to watching. And hopefully people, unless I've completely undersold it and done a terrible job, and I'm going to get a letter from the director saying, please stop bloody talking about our films, it's dangerous for our profits, then I would say watch it, please
please watch it, pretty please. No, yeah,
please.
I agree. It's a great film. If you haven't seen it, definitely recommend it. It is a really, really good film. It's really good. I've got full connection now on the internet. I've moved rooms.
Oh, congratulations.
So no more technical difficulties, I hope. So my first film is the 41-year-old virgin that knocked up Sarah Marshall and felt super bad about it. Yes! Yes. I really wanted to say that. Oh, I got through it. I was like, yes. It's not that film, though. No, it is though super bad. With 2007 by Greg Mottola. It doesn't really matter who the director is. It really doesn't matter. It's more, I suppose, with those films, it's more about the production company and who did it, because it is by the guys that did the 40-year-old virgin that also did Knocked Up. Hence the film that I just mentioned, which is a complete spoof of the whole lot, which really probably killed off those guys completely. But Superbad follows Jonah Hill's Seth and Michael Cera, the immortal Michael Cera, who is probably still looks the same, has the same hair, probably still typecast the same character. Poor fellow.
I know.
Evan, and I also have the brilliant Emma Stone. She was in there as Jules, and also Christopher Mentz. You can pronounce his surname. You know, that's probably why he's not in films anymore, because no one can actually present his surname. Who plays Fogel? Or McLovin. So the film follows those characters, but more specifically Evan and Seth. So they're high school seniors, I think, and they are going off to college. But these two are best friends. They have been best friends since the beginning of time. It's portrayed inseparable pair. One's going off to Dartmouth, the other's going off to a state college, and they're looking for one last party. Because because they are seniors, the high school seniors, they want a party. They want to get with some girls before they go to college. So this follows that journey, basically. That's pretty much what it is. Fogel, he manages to get a fake ID, so they want him to get some booze for the party that they've been invited to by Jules' character, by Jules. And like I said, that's basically it. I mean, along the way, there are certain things that happen throughout the film. And I remember I watched it back a couple of weeks ago and I thought, how did I like this and laugh as much as I did at the time? I just thought, it is so cringe-worthily awkward and makes my skin literally turn when, more specifically, Michael Cera's character, Evan. Oh, the fella is so. Oh, he makes my skin crawl.
The scene where they make him sing because they misidentify him as someone's brother who has like a beautiful voice or something, and so it's just Michael Cera standing in a room, sort of singing exactly how you would imagine Michael Cera would sing if you had never heard him before.
Yes, and it's the also scene where he punches Becca's boob, where he's going to go fist pump.
Like, the original Jeremy Corbyn, I think it's called.
He's like, I didn't mean I was a fist bump, but it's those two. It's the fact that she likes him and he likes her, but he doesn't pluck up the courage or doesn't know that she likes him, and it's that whole interaction. It is so cringeworthy awkward. The reason why it resonates so much is because for me, it was 2007, so I think we was leaving high school. We'd left sixth form and we were going into university, and I don't think I watched it in the cinema or anything. So it might have been a year up later. And my friend said, "You go watch Superbad. You love it. It's great." And I remember watching it at the time, going, "Yeah, it's brilliant. It's great," because it just reminds us of the time where our group of friends were going to parties and house parties and getting drunk and all that sort of stuff. And it just has that nostalgia element of those times and brings back nice memories. But the film, looking back now, is just a bit. I don't think they could do it now. I don't think they could do it now. Looking back at some of the jokes that they make and some of the way that they talk about girls and women and sex, it's like, I don't think they could do that now. I really don't. So
I suppose there's an argument to say, should they really have done it then? But yeah, I know what you mean. It's definitely very much kind of like I liked it when it first came out. I haven't watched it for
I liked it when it first came out,
but I think it's one of those. It's a boys club
film. Yeah, it is
thing, and so women are kind of presented in a very specific way, I suppose. Is probably how I would refer to it. And there are no real, like, I know obviously that there is Jules, but she's more kind of a catalyst for the narrative rather than a standalone. She's her by no means her. Yeah, she's just sort of there to make sure that this happens and this happens rather than anything else. But
I mean, like Jonah Hill in the film. I mean, he was 20. I think he was 29 when they filmed it.
35, 37.
It could have been.
Jonah Hill's one of those people that I feel like is, well, actually, Michael Cera is another good example. Like, I just don't know if, like, they just always look young, even when they're old.
Yeah, Jonah Hill's probably. Well, Jonah Hill has definitely done better out of Superbad than. You could probably say Emma Stone's probably done the best out of everybody that was in there.
Yeah, possibly.
I would say so. But the main characters like Michael Cera, who then went on to do the insufferable Scott Pilgrim Rules the World, I just
he was in Arrested Development as well for years, Michael Cera. Yeah, he was in Arrested Development for a long time. And then, I know like McLovin hasn't really done. Though saying that, I watched Promising Young Woman the other day and McLovin was in that. Can't remember the poor actor's name. I'm sure he doesn't care. I'm sure he's fine living in Bel Air or something. But he was in it, and he plays like a really, he just plays a creepy version of McLovin. That's the only way I can describe it. And I think it's because that poor kid is just so typecast that it's impossible to see him in any other way.
Yeah, and the same with Michael Cera. He was typecast immediately as he played Evan. That was it then. He was going to be the awkward teenager.
Meek kind of,
limpy handshake.
Yeah, he reminds me a little bit of the it's a very far stretch, but the kid who played Oliver in the musical version of Oliver Twist.
Oh, right, okay.
I can't remember what his name was, but it's that kind of, like very fair hair, very like petite and meek, and yeah, like just you could push him over by just like coughing or something. I don't know how you could push someone over with a cough. That's for smarter people than me to work out, Mark. But yeah, it's definitely, he's a bit, Michael Cera. Michael Cera, innit? There we go.
That's all we can say. It's Michael Cera. Michael Cera. Sorry, Michael Cera. If you're listening to this, don't sue us.
I don't know. No, it's fine. Let's not put that idea in his head.
No. But anyway, so Superbad. It was more to do with the fact that it was their journey and what was happening with them just sort of resonated with what was happening with us and our friends and that whole house parties. And I remember fondly going from sixth form to university and that summer because we tell a funny story. The first house party where we got invited to was it was only around the corner from ours. It was New Year's Eve. Oh, how hungover and drunk I was. There is picture. So my mum and dad came home with me leaving the front door open, the second door open, me just sat asleep in the chair with the lights on.
Oh no.
Oh yes. After throwing up everywhere. Oh yeah.
Oh no.
So, yeah. Fun times.
Oh gosh.
Fun times. Only around the corner. Fire. Yeah.
That's convenient. You get a sense in this film that they had to travel a little bit. There's a point where they had to get a ride from a slightly conspicuous kind of character.
Yeah.
But convenience, around the corner, brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, as a lady in my 30-somethings, I would love a house party around the corner. I almost insist that every house party I go to is around the corner.
Yes, which is within what? So my auntie's having a belated birthday party. It was her 90th birthday party. She's now 91, but that's by the by. The party is down the road, 2 minutes from my house. I'm like, yes.
So nice. Fancy a nap? Nip home, have a nap, go back. No one's the wiser.
Brilliant. Love it. I was like, yes. Yes,
I'm all about the convenience now. I think, it's a sign of my age. But that's lovely.
Yes.
I hope she has a lovely birthday.
Yes. Yes, all the fun. Yeah, this is not one of those Facebook invites where we're just bringing everybody.
I thought I was invited. This is awkward because I totally, I've just booked my train ticket up, so I was gonna come and hang out.
No, my auntie would probably just say, "Yeah, come along."
Oh,
yeah, but there we are. So so that was Superbad.
So, my next film is very different to Superbad. And my film's Shane Meadows is 2004 Dead Man's Shoes, which, I mean, I don't know. I feel like everyone's seen Dead Man's Shoes, but I think it might just be one of those echo chamber kind of things. But Dead Man's Shoes follows the story of Richard. So Richard is a former British paratrooper who returns home to his hometown of Matlock in Derbyshire to seek revenge. Sweet revenge on the kind of very it's just brutal and vicious gang who savagely, I think that's probably the best word I can use, tormented his disabled brother Anthony. So I mean, what more do you say? Richard is army trained, he's ruthless, he's calculated, and he has one goal: sweet vengeance. So it's very, very satisfying to watch from that perspective. It's, he's very much kind of framed as this angel of vengeance, and it is, you know, a real planned carnage. But to allow you to be very satisfied by the carnage that he invokes, you do have to witness some of the hardest and probably most disturbing scenes in British cinema, I think is probably fair to say. So cast wise, the one of the things that I really love about Dead Man's Shoes is if you are expecting to go in to see this polished piece of kind of cinema, you are going to be really disappointed. Apart from Paddy Considine, who plays the role of Richard, I would argue probably his best performance to date. I think it is absolutely groundbreaking. You know, he was in 24-Hour Party People a couple years before this, but I always think of this film as his like breakout role. And apart from Richard, pretty much all of the other cast are unknown. So they're either very early stage actors sort of looking for a breakout role, or they're not actors at all. They're boxers, they're criminals. So yeah, your performances that you're getting are very like not polished. They're quite what's the trying to is yeah, they're definitely under processed is probably how I'm going to describe it. They have like a real kind of authenticity to it that makes you feel like you're sat watching actual horrible people having these horrible conversations or doing these horrible things, rather than a group of trained actors performing as if they were those people. So as the kind of film continues, so what you have is you have sort of two stories that are running in parallel. You have Anthony's story, which is very sadly the story of a man with severe kind of disabilities being brutally tormented and abused by this gang. And then, as I say, running next to that, you have Richard's story as he goes and seeks vengeance against each of these individuals. I think that I'm just going to use the word gritty a lot because it's probably the perfect word to describe this film. Apart from the fact, you know, that you've got these kind of very unpolished actors, but you've also got these very, very bleak landscapes, bleak cityscapes, and yet they somehow manage to create like a visual sense of beauty. But it's very much kind of about it's super grey. It's very flat. There's a lot of you see a lot of poverty in the background, so in the like the cityscapes, a lot of empty shops, a lot of homelessness, lots of like working men clubs where there's like, you know, foam coming out the chair, and there's a real sense of, you know, economic deprivation. But yeah, sort of Shane Meadows very much describes it as this sense of kind of like human justice. So what we're seeing with Richard is a man who is doing what a lot of us couldn't do. So there are definitely, you know, hopefully no one listening to this has ever experienced anything like this to feel like they need to have such vengeance. But you know, we've heard those stories where we always think, oh, in that city, like I would hunt them down, and you know, I don't know, like shave all their hair off and I don't know, do something silly, or, you know, maybe not silly, but some people go really far. And, you know, you have those social media conversations where you see these very, very violent kind of like hang 'em and like all of those which I would never, obviously, never advise anyone do or encourage. But, you know, you have that kind of dialogue. And I think what Richard is that very small percentage of the population who follow through, where most of us would make approach it with like a logical sense, like, oh yeah, but, or, you know, and you can't, you're a human being. But the point is that Richard is broken now because of what's happened to his brother, and because he wasn't able to be there for him, he just can't move on. And so he does these very awful things, which as a viewer is really satisfying to watch because they're horrible people and you know they're horrible. But I don't think that most people would be willing to do it themselves. So yes, as I say, it's a really difficult film to watch. There are definitely stomach clenching scenes, but it does make Richard's revenge really sweet when it does happen, because they are really, 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 really horrible people. So yeah, it's not kind of a feel-good film if that's what you're looking for. Probably wouldn't watch it if you were sort of like feeling a bit sad, or you know, if it's like this or like Superbad, I'd probably say, you know, if you're in that kind of mood, probably just watch Superbad. But then when you're feeling more kind of more stronger in yourself, and you want to watch a really brilliant piece of cinematic well, yeah, again, another film, top 100, it's always up there, always up there. But yeah, I don't really know what else to say. Like, it's definitely, one thing I would say, I don't know if you would agree with this, Mark, it is a film of 2 viewings.
Well, it must it must be a film of 2 viewings, because I've only seen it once, and I must have blanked out all the horribleness, because you're
Really?
describing it, like, I don't remember it being that bad. But then again, it's been a while since I've watched it, so I'll have to go back and watch it again.
I would say
I do remember liking it, like enjoy it. Like I enjoyed watching it. I do remember thinking it was a good film, so I think I will have to go back and watch it.
I think there's kind of, without going down the too spoiler route, because I would say that this is one of my top 3 film, and like how it all comes together or doesn't come together at the end. I think the first time I watched it, I was just like blown away, and I think that's why I always think of it as a 2 viewing film, because once you truly know the whole story, being able to go back and revisiting it and realizing, oh, okay, that's what that meant. Yeah, it just really kind of makes the film even more impactful. But I mean, another big part of this film is the soundtrack. Shay Meadows is very good. He's got a real connoisseur of music, and just really has a very amazing catalogue. And probably, again, a bit more of an insight into my adolescent life. One of the final tracks in this film is a track by Aphex Twin, who were very much my band of choice, or not band, was a DJ, but my music of choice at that time. And you know, even if you don't know who Aphex Twin are, you'll recognise their music, because they feature a lot in British cinema. Love Four Lions, and obviously, you know, this as well. If you, yeah, I would definitely recommend listening to them. He is brilliant, Richard D. James. But yeah, so yeah, it's a difficult one. I can't recommend it enough. I think it's a brilliant film. You can actually watch it on YouTube at the moment. I did notice yesterday when I was looking for something else, I was watching some interviews with Shay Meadows, who, if I'm sure people have heard of Shay Meadows, but Shay Meadows obviously did Summerstown, This Is England, LeDonk and Scorsese, Romeo Brass, Room for Romeo Brass, sorry. So he's like a pretty established British director. He did Once Upon a Time in the Midlands as well, which he claims to be like, he hated it, and I think it was one of his big sort of filming regrets. But he is a really interesting character if you ever sort of get a chance to watch an interview with him. He had a pretty rough upbringing, and sort of experienced some real savage violence, or, you know, witnessed it himself. So I think knowing that, and sort of watching this film, you really feel like some of the crime that happens comes from a place of lived experience rather than our old imagination box.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dead Man Shoes.
Dead Man Shoes. Yeah, I've watched it. I do remember watching it. I don't remember it being as you describe it, but then again, it was a long time ago, so I will go back and watch it. And it is on YouTube.
It is on YouTube.
On YouTube.
Full film, free to watch. Thank you, YouTube. But yeah, I mean, it might be it'd be interesting. Definitely let me know when you do rewatch it what your thoughts are, because I mean, I just remember that it's kind of, there are some violent, like real violent bits, but it's the psychological element of it, and I think it's because of the fact that his brother Anthony is disabled, is that abuse. It's just very, very, very difficult to watch, like really difficult to watch. I can see someone being like having their arms chopped off, and that doesn't really bother me. But says so much about me as a person, doesn't it? But in the world of cinema, I'm just a bit desensitized. There we go. That's the word. I would obviously, I'm saying this in the world of cinema as well, not in real life. So I could not watch anything like that. Would, yeah, not even going down that rabbit hole. But yeah, it's I think it's that side of things is, maybe it's just something that I haven't been super exposed to, and so I find it really harrowing to watch. But I mean, I wouldn't want to not find it harrowing. I wouldn't want to be desensitized to that. That's just awful.
We'll move on.
Yes.
Yes, we'll move on. We'll move on, so we don't go down this rabbit hole any further.
No, not to find the white rabbit. We're pretty far down.
Pretty far down. So my next film is The Departed. Now, Emma says that we talked about it before, but then we have talked about Infernal Affairs before. Now, which we did talk about in great detail, because we couldn't believe that Martin Scorsese didn't know that this film was based on that film. And I tend to agree that it's hard to believe that. However, so there we go. Funny story was, I've got funny stories because all these films around that time. I've got another funny story for my last film as well. So for The Departed. So this was out in 2006. So I was probably 18, and me and my mates, we went to see it after a school trip to Fact Cinema in Liverpool. So we went there, we came back, we went and watched it, loved it, brilliant. A couple of my other mates who were in the year below in sixth form, they had to sneak into the cinema to watch it. They snuck in right at the time where Leo's unfortunate incident happened. Right at the end.
Right, yes.
And thought that was the beginning of the film.
Oh.
I went, oh, okay. So and then it went off for them like 10 minutes later. Well, did we laugh? Still a funny story to this day. Love that. Brilliant.
Bless them. Maybe they thought it was going to be like a Benjamin Button scenario. He was going to come back from the dead rather than get older or younger and old. I don't know which way that worked, but yeah.
So The Departed, Martin Scorsese, 2006, starring Matt Damon. Matt Damon, who stars as Colin. Also Leonardo DiCaprio, who stars as Billy. You have Jack, the great Jack Nicholson, stars as Frank Costello, who's the mob boss. So it follows the main story of Matt Damon and Leo's character. Matt Damon is a rat in the police, and Billy is a police officer, air quotes, in Frank's gang. And basically the film is them two trying to catch each other and trying to stay one step ahead of each other as Frank slowly but surely starts to break down quite mentally, with the stress of trying to find this rat in his crew. He's putting pressure on Matt Damon's character. You've got to find him. But it's just a brilliant film. This is the film that really got me into Martin Scorsese as a director. As we was going into, so this like I said, this was end of sixth form, really going into university, and I was going into studying film studies. So around that time, you sort of hit your wagon to certain directors. I think you sort of just you do that. So mine was Scorsese, which then for me, I went back and watched his back catalogue. So Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, King of Comedy, Casino. Went back, watched them all. But Departed really was the one that absolutely got me into Scorsese and, you know, the gangster thriller genre as more more open. And I did quite a few essays on Scorsese. So yeah, this was a real catalyst for me, and quite an important film, I think, as well for me, like I said, going into university. And the film itself is just, I mean, it did win. It won best picture, yeah, because it was the first one that because he didn't win best picture, which we talked about for Goodfellas.
Yes.
But he won best picture, yes, but he did win best picture for this, and the film is phenomenal. I love the opening 20 minutes, which is more like an extended prologue to music. So you have the Rolling Stones, Give Me Shelter playing throughout, and it's it's Collins and Billy's characters as they're growing up and then training in the police. And then where the prologue ends, it's sort of the story of those two trying to catch each other begins. So Billy's sort of getting told that he's not going to be a police officer, but we'll get you to do this. Where Matt Damon's character, is just starting out in the stadies, as they call them, in like the special crimes unit. And again, I think as well, Martin Scorsese, he's got a great ear for soundtracks as well, and this one's got a really good one. The Dropkick Murphys, Pink Floyd, the Rolling Stones, absolute banging tunes. Love it. And one of the things, again, that really, which I love about the film is having watched it a load, and having to study mise en scène and all that. You do pick up on all the little tropes and little things that, you know, Martin Scorsese does as a director that he's brought through from Mean Streets all the way through. And one of the things that I really loved about the film is the crosses on the windows and the crosses on the floor. So if you ever saw a cross, then you knew, oh, that guy's going to get it, and that guy's going to get it, and that guy's going to get it. So those little foreshadowing and indicators of what's going to happen to characters throughout the film is really portrayed through this simple cross. I always remember the scene where a certain character is falling down the building. Well, he's been thrown off a roof, and as he's going down, each window has a cross in the window as he's falling, plummeting. Yeah, which I thought was a lovely little, you know, the good thing about, you know, directors and stuff, they do put the little touches in there, and, you know, if you watch a film enough, I suppose you will just pick up on these things that are in there, and I think that's great. But yeah, it's such an iconic film. I still don't believe that for 1 minute that he didn't know it was about such a film, and not for 1 second. The performances are great. I think as well for The Departed in particular, it was more like the secondary characters, because we mentioned about Marky Mark's Duggan.
Oh yeah.
What a great performance by him.
Yeah, he is so good. He is really good.
I suppose the bad cop, really, to Michael Sheen's good cop. Them two play off each other really well. And then you also got Mr. French, is Ray Winston's character, who's just a complete psychopath. You mentioned about that scene where they just shoot somebody and goes, oh, they felt funny. And they just kept it in because it was just a throwaway sort of scene, but it was great. Such a really important film for me, and one that I will always enjoy going back and watching. The Departed, love it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's it's one of the things that we were saying in the podcast before, where we were talking about Infernal Affairs, about very unlikely that he didn't know about it. But what I found that he did do with The Departed was we were saying, like, the female roles in Infernal Affairs, they were sort of split across three. You had like the psychologist, the partner, and then the mother of the child, whereas this was all amalgamated into one role that was played by so I think that was a really, really good choice, and it made her a much stronger character. She didn't fall into the risk of becoming like the catalyst like the other three women did for kind of narrative projection, but she really was her own, and she such an important part in that film as well. And I really liked her character.
The one thing watching it back, I know, you watch films loads and you go back and go, why did you do that? And one of the things that I asked myself actually watching it back recently was, why did Leo run out of the office at the end of the film? Why didn't he just stay there, hide the piece of paper, still get his money, and then not lose his identity? And he could have wrapped it all up in an. Why did he? I know, obviously, it doesn't make for good storytelling.
And it probably wouldn't have ended in the same way if it.
But you just said, why didn't you just stay? You could have carried on acting, just put on the brave face, just be like, oh, thanks, mate. Yeah, I'll take my money out. And then, boom, got you. But
yeah, done.
No, he ran off. Well, not so much right. Well, he did run off.
Too emotional.
There we are. Reading far too much into it, but there we go. So, the party.
Is a great film, and I think I don't think we have done it before. I think it was just because that and Infernal Affairs is just so similar. So
funny
similar.
Funny.
My final film, you will be pleased to know, it ends on a lighter note.
Yes, we end on a lighter note.
Ends on a lighter note because young Emma wasn't all about heroin overdoses and children murdering children and violent crimes against vulnerable human beings and sweet revenge. Emma also liked a lot of comedy. Wah, wah, wah. So my final film is Edgar Wright's absolute classic 2004 film, Shaun of the Dead. Uno 1 in the Cornetto numero 1, numero 1 in the Cornetto trilogy. I think probably a lot of people have seen this film, but for me, when I was growing up, I've always been a big fan of British comedy. We've spoken a lot about, TV shows that we used to watch, like you were saying, Father Ted and Dad's Army and Fawlty Towers, Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, IT Crowd, and Spaced obviously was a big one for me. That was directed by Edgar Wright and written by, as she was then, Jessica Stevenson, Jessica Stevenson, and then she became Jessica Hines, didn't she? But and Simon Pegg. So Shaun of the Dead follows the story of Shaun, who's played by Simon Pegg. So Shaun is very much down on his luck. He's lost his girlfriend. He's in a dead-end job. His best friend, Ed, is a drug dealer. Spoiler alert, Ed is played by Nick Frost. And to top it all off, there only ends up to be a bloody zombie apocalypse. I mean, can he catch a break? But this film is very much about kind of Shaun's redemption, and him going from that point of kind of, not having a real purpose in life and kind of having this real stuck in a monotonous world where everything sort of just ticks along, to pretty much saving the world. No biggie, just standard day in the office of Simon Pegg. I think I think so many people will have watched this film already. If you haven't, just press pause and go watch it. I'm sure you can find it on Netflix or Prime or maybe even YouTube. Apparently YouTube is giving out films for free now.
I think it is on Netflix.
Yeah, I'm sure it is on Netflix. But it's, it's a film that it's so funny. It's got such an incredible cast. You've got Dylan Moran is in it. You've got Peter Serafinowicz. You've got pretty much the entire cast of Spaced at one point. They do really clever things. There's the scene where they've got they're almost taking the joke of taking the mick out of this concept of the standard form of friend groups in cinema. So you've got the lead protagonist, his girlfriend, her best friend, her best friend's boyfriend, and then the lead protagonist's best friend and mum, that kind of thing, isn't it? And then there's actually a point in the film where they cross another party and they have exactly the same setup. And I think the point of that is like, and they do it a lot in Spaced, and actually in other films that Edgar Wright has done with Simon, that this idea of like, what about this other, what if a parallel story was happening while this, and that's where you see Jessica Stevenson playing the role of like Shaun of the Dead, Simon Pegg, and then I'm trying to remember who, like her boyfriend I think was Reece Shearsmith.
No, Martin Freeman, wasn't it?
No, oh yeah, maybe it was her. No, it was. So Martin Freeman was her boyfriend.
Matt
Lucas was the Ed character.
Yeah,
Reece Shearsmith isn't it, but he plays like the Dylan Moran character, the best friend's boyfriend. Yes. I just can't remember who the best friend is. But and then I'm pretty sure that Sean's mum in their crew is played by the woman who plays Marsha from Spaced.
Oh, okay. Right.
But yeah, it's such a fun film. It's great. It's really silly in parts. It's definitely like so referenced, and it in itself it references a lot of cinema as well. I find a lot of the work that Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright do is a real like love letter to cinema. Like they grew up watching a lot of films, and they grew up listening to a lot of great music, and I think that really kind of presents itself in all the stuff they're doing. One of the things I love is that there's nothing about this that's real at all. There's never been a zombie apocalypse, spoiler alert, but they do still work really hard to create this sense of kind of realism in it. So the presenters on the news, for example, you'll remember, who are presenting like instructions on how to kill a zombie, right? Like what I can't remember what was exactly saying. It's like
destroying
the brain. Yeah, it's like remove the head
or destroy
the brain.
Yeah,
I can't believe I'm saying this, ladies and gentlemen, but remove the head or destroy. And that's these are all being spoken by actual British news reporters. So there is a part of you that it's fiction, and you're watching a very brilliant but funny and silly British comedy, but you're like, oh, that's what it would look like. That would, they're the people. It would be Jon Snow telling me to remove the head and destroy the brain. There's something kind of a bit creepy in that.
Not Game of Thrones Jon Snow. We're talking about
not to be confused.
Not to be confused
with that Jon Snow, who's obviously got a rich history of presenting the news. But a lot of I didn't realise as well, a lot of the extras in Shaun of the Dead are non-actors who they recruited through the Spaced Out forum. So there was an online forum back in the day for absolute loyal Spaced fans. Spaced is in the TV series, not as in Brian Cox, but yeah, as in sort of the TV series that Edgar did with Simon and Jessica. And yeah, a lot of them were recruited through there. So a lot of the people that you're seeing doing their very best zombie impressions, they're just everyday film nerds like you and I, except their lives are immediately a lot better because they were in Shaun of the Dead.
We got an extras credit.
Yeah, it's really cool. Really cool. I like that. I think that, like, that's, to me anyway, it screams, that's the sort of thing that if I made films, I would do that, because I know how excited I would be if I had that opportunity as a non-film person, a non-actor, director. So I think that's what I just have so much love for this film, and it's just, like I say, it's so funny, it's so feel good, even though you are watching a lot of people being murdered because they're eating people or destroying brains or cutting off heads. But they do one of the more iconic kind of tropes that features in a lot of other of Edgar Wright's films is they tell you all the way through the film, from the very beginning, what's going to happen. So there's a scene at the beginning where Sean and Liz have just broken up, and him and Sean and Ed are at the pub together, and they're talking, or maybe it's just before they go to pub, and they're talking through what they're going to do, and they talk about it as like, I can't remember exactly what the quote is. I'm sure that there are people who will know and are screaming it at me, but it's like, do this, go to the Winchester, have a lock up, go grab Liz, and they talk, and actually what they're talking through is what happens through the film, but in a much more convoluted way than what I've just explained it.
How's that for a slice of fried gold?
There you go.
It's so good.
It is. It's so good. It is so fun. Someone was saying to me the other day that at the beginning it's very much kind of about repetition, and then how small changes to things that you see day in day out can have such a startling effect. So one of the big things is like every morning Sean gets up, goes to the corner shop, gets like something, whether it be like a cornetto, milk or something like that. One day it's fine, it's totally normal, and the next day he goes, the shopkeeper isn't there, and there's a zombie kid eating something, or eating someone on the side of the road. But because he's so like in that kind of go mode, he's just in a daze. He doesn't notice it. But actually, when the very first time that he walks into a corner shop, there's radio playing, and the radio announcer is speaking in Hindi, and he says apparently there are reports of people coming out of their graves. So even at that very, very early point in the film, before we've even seen anyone cough, this is you're told like immediately, like, this is a film about zombies. I mean, spoiler alert, the title kind of gives that away. But it's that kind of complete disregard. Like, it feels like they're so excited about what they're going to show you, they can't keep it to themselves, and they're like, okay, there's going to be zombies, it's going to be great, and they're going to eat each other, it's going to be great, it's going to be great, just stick it out. So Bill Nye's in it, Nye, it's going to be great. So and I think that passion for film and for the absurd is just always carried on particularly in Edgar Wright's filmmaking.
So good. I love Shaun of the Dead. We could carry on talking about Shaun of the Dead. You can talk about, I know you mentioned last time about like Baby Driver and the music and how it's out to every beat. Well, even in Shaun of the Dead, he was doing that with the likes of Queen.
Don't Stop Me Now.
Don't Stop Me Now, and they're hitting the thing and doing to the beat. And he loves music. I mean, it's so clear that he loves music, Edgar Wright. I mean, you have Panic on the Streets of London in there. And also when it's the little things about Shaun of the Dead and his films where he comes back from the corner shop the second time when it's all like happening, and he's flicking through the TV channels, and the TV channels is telling them what is happening. It's man-eating tigers are.
So it's cutting through different shows, but it lands on such a perfect point that actually, if you close your eyes, you're just hearing someone tell you that there's a zombie apocalypse and people are. It is he has like that real approach to filmmaking that. It just reminds me of like, when you go to a conference and there's just someone really inspiring there, and you come back and you're like, oh my God, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that, and you completely revolutionize how you approach your work, and everyone has to just start from scratch because you've just solved it now. You just know how you're going to make millions of pounds. I feel like that's Edgar Wright. Like he's just so passionate and just he's so enthusiastic about what he does, and it just, I think especially Shaun of the Dead and most of the Cornetto trilogy, I think it really screams out like he just loves making films.
I think the last bit we'll before we move on is when it does this such a British thing which says, what should we do now? Have a cup of tea.
Have a cup of tea. Go to the Winchester, have a pint.
Yeah, have a cup of tea, sit down. There's a girl in the car. Oh, it's just, we could talk about this for ages. But we can't. We've got to move on.
No.
We've got to move on to the second Cornetto film, Hot Fuzz.
Hot Fuzz.
Hot Fuzz. Is Hot Fuzz as good as... I think both have their own merits. World's End... I'm not really a fan of World's End. Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead are equally as good for me.
Yeah, they're great. And I think there is a danger of comparing and contrasting, isn't there?
Yes.
Especially,
yes.
I get that it's like it's in a series, but I'm sure as people would argue about Star Wars, like they're each individual films in their own right, and they shouldn't be compared one against the other. And I feel the same with The Godfather. Actually, don't think The Godfather should be compared. One is not necessarily better than two. Two is not better than one. They are just exemplary films, and we should just be grateful and not talk about Godfather Part 3. But I think that's the same with Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. I think that they're both standalone fantastic films. Yeah, sorry, go talk about Hot Fuzz.
so this is also, I do have a funny story about this. More funny for me. Well, so. Again, in sixth form, so we had a trip to the cinema to watch Hot Fuzz, which was brilliant. Loved it.
You did a lot of cinema trips in your school.
Yes,
I suppose you were doing film studies in sixth form.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
So we did. So we went to the local cinema to watch. It's a school trip. It's just going to the cinema. People are like, "What, you went?" Yeah. It's educational in a sense that it's a film and we're studying films, but that's about it. But basically, it was just a jolly to the cinema. It was like 10 o'clock in the morning. But it wasn't just like, it was our class and the other class below. And for some reason, I still don't get why, but the deputy head of the school came with us at the time, and she must have been well in her 70s. I mean, she was like, just the last sort of type of person who you'd expect to go to the cinema and watch Hot Fuzz. And now we'd already seen it previous, so we knew what was going to happen during the film and, what to expect. So seeing this, like I say, little old lady who was well in her 70s sit down, watch, laugh, love and enjoy Hot Fuzz was quite a juxtapose, I must say. Especially because Hot Fuzz it's quite gory in places. Very, very gory in places. As gory as some of the scenes in Shaun of the Dead, really. But anyway, so Hot Fuzz this time follows Simon Pegg and Nick Frost characters. Simon, who is Nicholas Angel, who is Angle. Who is a police officer, not man, police officer in the Metropolitan Police of London. But he is so good at his job. He is like the best police officer going. He has got all the training, advanced cycling training. He was in the famous SO19 squad. He was the best. His arrest rates, crime rate, all that, he brought it down. He was so good that they moved him because he was showing everybody up. So they moved him to the country, the safest village in the UK, Sanford. I think it's near Bristol, I think. Sanford. It's a made-up village anyway.
Yeah, it's meant to. I think Stanford is filmed in Wells in Somerset, and that's, I'm sure, where Edgar Wright grew up.
Yeah. Sanford isn't actually a real place, by the way, people. Sanford is.
But if you want to see the set, just go to Wells.
Yeah. So Sanford is a. I think if I remember rightly, it's like a fake police sort of name for like an exercise. So they call it like Sanford. So I think that's where it came from. I may have just completely made that up. Sounds brilliant.
Yeah, stick with it.
But I'm going to stick with it, yeah. So it's Sanford Village, the safest village in the UK, wins Village of the Year all the time. Couldn't be furthest thing from London. And he has got a new promotion as a sergeant there. Along the way, he meets Nick Frost, who's I can't remember his character's name now. I do. This is preparation, isn't it? I did have it up. So Nick Frost, Danny.
Sorry, I just caught what you were saying.
Danny, who is sort of like he's sort of the same type of character that he was in Shaun of the Dead. He's a bit of a fool, bit of a kind of idiot. I mean, he asks questions all the time, like, is it true? Is there a place in a man's brain where if you shoot it, his head will blow up? And you're like, he's a police officer. No. So
Have you
he
ever
asks
fired your
those
gun
sorts of
into the air
questions.
and shouted "R"?
Yeah. Yeah. But Danny's innocence comes from the fact that he has watched so many action movies over the years. He watched, like, say,
Point Break,
Bad Boys 2, Die Hard. He's seen the lot. And his impression of police work is what he thinks they are in the cinema. So he's instantly attached himself to Nicholas, and he's like, I want to do what you do. He said, you do what I do. He said, this is the job. What do you expect? But I
think that's the thing, isn't it? Is that, like, Danny's used to this very, like, country style of policing where you just arrest someone for trimming someone else's hedge, or you have to go and find a loose swan, a loose goose. Whereas, obviously, Nick, coming from the Met, is seen as being, like, somehow more like those kind of, like, Hollywood style characters.
Yeah, and there's that scene where he's have you ever been to High Speed Pursuit? Like, yes. And then they go in a little bit of High Speed Pursuit. That was brilliant. it's like 10 seconds. But all is not quite right with Sanford. People are starting to be basically, murdered, disappear. You have shady characters that are all around. The absolute brilliant character of Mr. James Bond, who is obviously not James Bond anymore. Timothy Dalton, that's the one, who plays the very shady local supermarché owner. And throughout the film, so people are being murdered and killed off, and Simon Pegg like they're being murdered, like nobody else is seeing it. They're all accidents, and it's not. But nobody's believing him because everybody's been, institutionalized by the Sanford way, and then you have the neighborhood watch who actually control things and which see everything. Those crusty jugglers, and it's just a great film. Really love it. And it does end up being a Bad Boys 2 film. There is a massive shootout at the end where, at the end of the film, Nicholas is proven to be right. There is a conspiracy. His police constable was in it all along. It's just not doing it justice, but it's brilliant. I mean, I suppose everybody's seen Hot Fuzz. It's very much like Shaun of the Dead, obviously, in terms of the amount of references that are in there. It's so good. I watched it back the other week, and it was just so much fun just watching it back. It's like the little references that are in there when he's watching. He's looking at the where Danny's by the discount bin of the DVDs. It's like Super Cop, a cop that can't be stopped. But as somebody's running past, like stole something, he throws it back in, and there's Shaun of the Dead.
Shaun of the Dead in the bargain bin. Yeah.
It's like stuff like that. I just love it. And it's Edgar Wright again. Obviously, the soundtrack, like we've mentioned before, he does a great soundtrack. And one of the great scenes in there is when the guy's house blows up and Timothy Dalton's character drives by. Fire.
Oh, yeah.
It's like instantly telling you, he did it. It was him. Nicholas Angel knows he did it, but he can't convince everybody else that he did it. And I love it. Love.
It is brilliant. I think as well, like, we speak a little bit about the amazing cast that they had in Shaun of the Dead.
I think equally as good.
It's just, I would say it's probably even better. Like, you had the kind of, you had just such brilliant casting in Shaun of the Dead. And then I think because of the huge success of that film, everyone just wanted to be a part of it. So, Steve Coogan appears in it.
Martin Freeman.
Martin Freeman, obviously Timothy Dalton is in it. Olivia Colman, Bill Bailey.
Bill Bailey, who played the twins, and is like,
yeah, the happy, the sad. He's like, no,
no one tells me nothing.
No one tells me nothing. Yeah, and obviously the two Andys. You've got Paddy Considine and Rafe Spall. Yeah, they're just. I mean, the list could just go on and on and on. But yeah, I think it's just a really fun film. One of my favorite scenes is a really, really silly scene, so it probably says a lot about my sense of humor. But one of my favorite scenes is the scene where they go to the farmer's house with the landmine.
Oh yeah.
And there's and it really plays on this concept of kind of accent and how
country speak,
country dialogue, and how I think sometimes like that kind of very like London city centric view of the country can be a bit bit biased sometimes. But you have those like, so you've got 3 or 4, I can never remember how many it is. So you've got the farmer who has a landmine, who is completely incomprehensible. So he's like, blah, blah, blah. And then you've got and then you've got the local police officer who you can't understand. Anyway, translating from the farmer to then Danny, who's then translating all like the two, who then translates it back to Nick. But it's really, really silly. Like, it's super silly, but it just makes me laugh every time I watch it. But there's some great, really, really great scenes, really, really corny puns, really, the bit where Timothy Dalton, what's his name? Simon
Skinner.
Simon Skinner. He's like running up alongside Nick. He's like, I have to be arrested. I'm a slasher of prices. It's like, it's just so ridiculous. But I think it just shows you that kind of level of like, they're just not used to this concept of like crime. And it's not because crime doesn't happen, because it does, but they're just painting this facade over the top. I always find, I don't know if you've seen this, but if when I was at uni, I remember my lecturer saying there are 2 ways that you can like establish a shot or a city or a new place in film. You can either use the very boring Hollywood style of establishing shots, which is where you pretty much get like a helicopter panning over and panning up to a new city, right? Like, it's like, oh yeah, look, there's the Empire State Building, we're in New York. Or you have the Edgar Wright approach, which is Nick Angel stood at a train station with his peace lily as a train buzzes past, then cut to him standing or sitting on the train with his peace lily looking up at the next, and then eventually coming out and being at Stanford train station in the dark on his own with the peace lily. So there are 2 kind of ways, and he was like, there's no right way or wrong way, but that's the right way of doing it. It's a much more visually interesting way of doing it, because you learn as much about the character as you learn about the city or the space, the concept of travel, I suppose, more than the actual idea of the city. But I always remember that.
I just remember that scene making me jump, because he didn't expect the train to go past and it being so
loud.
Like, I was like, whoa, it's a bit of a jolt. It's such a good film. I could quote the film for ages and ages. What he thinks, because nobody likes him there. And when someone rings up saying his name is Peter Ian Staker, he's like, really? Peter Ian Staker?
And then it cuts, and it's just him with
with Steve Merchant going, so Mr. Staker, the swans escaped. but then it goes back to that, the mundaneness of just everyday policing, which Danny doesn't believe that he's doing, is that, like you said, the swans escaped. It just goes into, it's just so good. I love Hot Fuzz. It's brilliant, and I'm going to assume that people have seen it.
I think that a lot of people will have seen Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, because apart from the fact that there are, you know, a bit of blood and gore, very much the case for poor Adam Buxton's, old Buckles' character in Hot Fuzz, who receives a little chimney, not chimney, is it? It's like a church spike through the old noggin. Apart from the moments of extreme violence, like it is they're both really good Sunday chill films, or equally like Friday beer and pizza, you know, films. You can watch them with your family, you can watch them with your friends. Like, I mean, obviously, you know, violence aside, you probably wouldn't want to watch them with little ones, but they're just such easy, such fun films to watch. And yeah, one of the things about Hot Fuzz is like sometimes the accents are just they purposely hype them up to be just a bit silly and a bit hyperbolic. And that's I love Olivia Colman in that. She's just so crude, and she puts on this like really over the top Cornish accent, isn't she?
Very much a yokel.
Yeah, super yokel. Oh yeah. It's great. It's such a good shout. I'm glad that we finished on these two classics.
Yeah, we could have just done the whole podcast on Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, and just literally quote both films just incessantly.
Do you think there's a way that you could do a whole podcast without actually using your own words and just using like lines in the film?
Yes, probably. Yes. Leslie Taylor was murdered. I love that breakdown. I just love that too. Anyway, moving on.
Fascist.
Yes. Hag.
Hag.
3 down.
4 down.
Anyway, so that was our little insight into our formative years, 16 to 20. But we may revisit them years if we can think of any more films from that time. I'm sure there are, but those are just
gosh, so many. I said at the beginning, I found this really difficult because there were so many films that I adored and watched daily in some instances. So I found this one really, really hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are loads more. I want to talk about In Bruges.
I nearly picked In Bruges.
In Bruges, like, what was my list? So my other options were The Room, which we spoke about, because I love The Room for all its horrible, creepy, not creepy, well, the acting's pretty creepy, actually. Dogville, Anchorman, Control, Cinedoc New York. But that I feel like we just need a whole episode on Cinedoc New York, because it'll probably take me about an hour trying to explain what's going on.
Never seen it, so there we go.
Have you not?
No.
Go watch it. It's on I'm pretty sure it's on Prime or Netflix at the moment. It is a real, like, you have to kind of focus.
Okay. Well, on that recommendation, I'll see. There's lots of recommendations on this episode. So yes. So until next time, we will catch you soon. Hope you enjoy it. Let us know what films you grew up with or helped form your later years in life. I don't know how to say that, but there we go.
What films were important to you during your developmental years, your special teenage years that made you awkward and moody, and at that point defined who you were?
Yes. Thank you. So on that note, we shall catch you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.